I think we'll go ahead and get started with our workshop. First of all, I want to thank you for being here and welcome you to our workshop on prepping for proposal. You know, this is a very important part of your thesis or dissertation program, so we want to make sure that you get as much information and tips that you can so that you can be successful. Before we start and we introduce the speakers, I do want to let you know that we have more resources and information about this entire process at our Graduate Resource Center and on our website. Our Graduate Resource Center is located on the 3rd floor of the administration building, which is that 3-story building. And we have staff that's available to help you when you get ready to format your thesis or dissertation. Please feel free to call us or come by if you need any help. We also have a lot of resources on our website. We have the thesis manual that'll give you, checklists and more information. Please download that if you haven't already. You're going to need that as you go through the process. We have our staff, as I mentioned, and they're here today. I want to introduce them. Bobby Myatt, who's been helping to put this together, and I think she did a very thorough job to make sure you have all the information today that you'll need. We have Tony Vega back there, who's our administrative coordinator, and he'll schedule appointments. Either he'll help you or one of our other staff when you need assistance at our Graduate Resource Center. Catherine Tapia is also a graduate assistant. Luis Alanis is a graphic artist, and he's up here. And Danielle, who's a PhD in business, is one of our graduate assistants. He'll be speaking a little bit later. So we're all here to help you, and feel free to stay afterwards to ask questions or come by and see us. I'm going to leave my card as well up front, so if I can help you with anything, please let me know. So I'd like to introduce our faculty and pass this along to them. Unfortunately, Brian Warren was not able to join us today, but we do have Dr. Shirley Mills, who's representing the Educational Leadership Program in the College of Education. We have Dr. Philip Zwerling, who's representing English, College of Arts and Humanities, and Dr. Dave Jackson with the MBA program. We're going to start with Dr. Mills, and she's also going to invite one of her students to help her present as well, and then we'll continue with the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming. First, I'd like to introduce Dagoberto Ramirez, who is my doctoral student, and he and I work together, and I'd like to have him come on up, because we're going to start, and I'm Dr. Warren. So we know that he is gone, but we'd like to address your committee, and our suggestion to you is to begin thinking about a committee chair as soon as you start taking your doctoral courses and your master courses. You need to find that person who you work well with during your coursework and during the time you are working. Is that person well organized? Do they come to meetings on time? Do they meet you on time? Are they producing research themselves, which is critical? And are they publishing as well? Take the time to look at those vitas. Everybody's is on the website. And finally, you need to think about their research and your research, and does it align in some way? Because you have a pretty long relationship with your chair, and it's important that you really get along well. When you address committee, that is done in our college with the chair. So when Beto and I sat down, I did not dictate who he could choose, but I asked him to think about a methodologist, a content specialist, and a darn good editor reviewer. And we talked about that, and it's important that your chair and yourself are able to work well with those committee members, because they can hold you up if you do not choose carefully. You want to choose committee members who are willing to commit their time and contribute to your proposal and dissertation with good feedback. So if the professor gives you good feedback throughout the coursework, that professor can be counted on probably to give you good feedback during your writing of your proposal and your dissertation. Let's see, and finally, my other suggestion, and actually Beto and I talked about this, you need to talk to those people who are in the pipeline ahead of you. They've already finished their proposal. They're well into their dissertation. They will tell you very quickly. Beto, why don't you give us some practical student advice?
Well, good evening, and thank you for being here. Let me tell you a very quick story. On Good Friday last year, I had good news. I received word that I got in the mail that I had passed my comps, which are our comprehensive exams in the College of Ed doctoral program. So immediately I picked up the phone and I called Dr. Mills. And she answered the phone and she said, "Hello, this is Shirley Mills." And I said, "Yes, this is Dagoberto." And of course, she knew me because I had taken lots of classes with her. And I said, "Are you busy right now?" I realized it's Good Friday, but I didn't want to waste a moment, right? And so she says, "Well, I'm in the middle of reading like 2 or 3 papers and doing this and that." And I said, "Okay, well then I guess I'll talk to you later, but I was going to ask you to be the chair on my committee." "Oh, okay." And so the conversation changed quickly. We got excited, but I told her, "I just want to let you know, good news, and I'll see you next Tuesday when we get back." Now, there's no way I would have called her on Good Friday when I received my news if I didn't know who she was. So the first thing you really got to find out is who are the people in your department, and you've got to listen to their stories. You've got to find out who they are beyond just the content expertise they have, the idiosyncrasies they may have in the way they teach and the way they work with you. You've got to find out who they are, and a lot of things Dr. Mills alluded to. So all of these little work things that she mentioned are truly, truly important. Punctuality, good reviewers, etc. But it's a very big decision I had to make, and I already knew way before Friday, I guess it was April or March, I don't remember when Easter was last year, but I already knew who I was going to probably approach. And I couldn't officially approach her until in art college anyway, until I passed our comprehensive exams. So man, as soon as it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I called her because I had just opened up the mail. And so that is my biggest recommendation for you, is to get to know your professors really well. As far as the other people, I already had like 2 people in mind. I needed a 4th one, and I was open to recommendations, suggestions from her and from the other 2 who I was hoping and believed, and of course they did say yes. So I got feedback from Dr. Mills and also from Dr. Francisco Guajardo, whom I asked to be on my committee, and Dr. Miguel de los Santos. And between the recommendations from them and me knowing other professors, I brought the 4th one in, Dr. Maria B. Roberts. So it's not a decision I took lightly of 2 things. Who's the chair? Because you don't jump until the chair says jump. And you don't really, I mean, I am working with my other 3 committee members, but it's Dr. Mills is organizing and running my show. I mean, she's my director, my producer of this dissertation I'm putting together. And I have to honor and respect that. Otherwise, why would I have brought her in and then treat somebody else like the chair? So I'm saying that, and we didn't know we were going to do this talk right now because we're actually pretending we're this other person who's not here. So
All right.
just wanted to speak from the
Let's
heart,
move
but
on.
yes.
I did do a little quick PowerPoint. Inside your folders is a one sheet, front back, because Bobby asked me to speak about the IRB as well.
Dr. Mills, just add one thing.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Dr. Mills had asked me to jump in too if there's
Yes.
anything else, because we're kind of filling in for Dr. Warren on this. And the thoughts there about the committee is very important. One of the things I always like to point out to students who are at that stage when they're about to begin their dissertation is life changes at that point. Simply put, prior to that, you were a traditional student. You knew you had classes on Monday at 10 o'clock or on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. And you had that schedule. You had to go to the classes whether you liked it or not. You had exams coming up, and you knew when the exams dates were, whether you liked it or not, and you'd study for it and so on. But when you get to the dissertation stage, life changes, because all of a sudden now it's open. The dissertation is yours, and obviously it's going to happen at your pace for the most part. It's going to be you. You don't have those 10 o'clock classes. You don't have a specific exam at the end of the semester. And that's why it's so important to choose the committee well, particularly the chair, because that's the person who is going to manage that process and help you with that process and push you. Because it's easy to say, okay, next week I'll run this analysis, or next week I'll continue with a literature review, or so on. And I've seen it many times with students who just literally, we have an affectionate term for them. We say that they're tenured students. They just stay on, and their dissertation runs and it runs and it runs. And that's why you want a committee that is not only going to challenge you in terms of making sure that you do good work, but a committee that is going to keep you on track and make sure you do what you need to do. At the same time, too, despite your best efforts, you could end up with someone on the committee who perhaps doesn't do what I'm talking about to push you, or you get frustrated because they're just not reading and getting back to you quick enough. And I always point to my own experience with when I did my dissertation several years back. There was one member of my committee who I just simply could not get to read the stuff, and he was the external member. I almost didn't choose this person, but I was kind of mandated in the program, the school I was in. We needed this external person, and that was the person who was put on the committee. It was the hardest thing to get him to read anything. I mean, literally, I would contact him almost, I was a pest. Almost every day I'd go and nothing. And I eventually got him to read my dissertation by literally going to his house and playing with his kids. I literally had to do that. I had to run around, crawl around on the ground with his 3-year-old and his 5-year-old. That's the only way I could get him to read it, because every day he'd come in, I got home, I couldn't do it. The kids. And the next day at work, he couldn't do it. And I says, okay, I'll fix this. So I went to his house and played around on the carpet that I was, Bugs Bunny and whatever I needed to be. And that's just something I wanted to point out to you. If you're not careful, you could have someone on a committee like that. And that's why it's so very important to select persons well, to make sure that they work well with you, to make sure that they will also push you to get this done.
Thank you. Yes. All right, we're just going to move right along into IRB. And number one is CITI, we affectionately call it city training, must be done. When you start writing your proposal, I recommend that you start prepping and getting that CITI done. You do not want to get to your proposal, defend it, and then go, oh, I forgot to do my CITI. because the IRB process cannot be completed without that training. And there are a number of exams of the CITI. You have to speak to your chair to determine which ones you need to take. Secondly, when to begin. This is how I do it. My two colleagues can jump in and share how they do it. I say when you submit the proposal, the final proposal to your committee, it takes a minimum of 2 weeks, and in our college, it's mandatory. You have to give professors a minimum of 2 weeks to read your proposal. Well, everybody at that point, unless they're told, go, whew, I'm done. No, that's when you need to get your IRB started. That is a must. Now, I have given you your website. I'm telling you the IRB website is fabulous. They have guides, they have checklists, they have samples. It really isn't as difficult as we all make it to be. It goes pretty quickly. So where to begin? You just go to that website and everything will work. Protocol, IRB protocol. There is a submission form, and it doesn't matter who you are, you have to submit that form from any college. So I have given you the website for that. Procedure. As soon as your committee, you propose, your committee says, wow, it's a go. I sit down with my students, we look the completed proposal over, and they walk it over that day, or the minimum of 2 days later. So when you defend, your committee says it's a go, you're ready to walk that IRB over. 2 paper copies. You have to have 2 of everything in paper. Let's see. Time to approval. Everyone thinks that the IRB approval is going to be really quick. No, it is not going to be really quick. It is going to be 4 weeks, much more likely 6 weeks. So do you waste that time? No. That's when you go back to this proposal that was written like, I'm going to, I will, and while you're slowed down, start changing the format of your first chapters 1, 2, and 3. I did a survey. I completed an interview. And so never slow down, never slow down. Just keep in mind that the IRB board is composed of professors like us. We have to research, we have to publish, we have to serve our university, our college, and our departments. We have to teach, and we're also responsible for all of you. So that all takes time. And let me see, have I forgotten anything here? Realistic time. Make sure your timelines are realistic, okay?
go with the practicals.
Okay, well, I want to share very briefly, Dr. Mills asked me to share, share with them some of the things about IRB that you went through. So the first thing is, in the College of Education at least, we have a very dynamic, organic network where we help each other, and so we rely on people who, like Dr. Mills mentioned earlier, have been through the pipeline before. So I had samples from my colleagues. So what are the kinds of things we share? It's up there. Previous IRB protocols with, and redacting information that is confidential. They would delete it before they pass it on to somebody else. Different kinds of informed consents you will need, interview protocols. We share survey literature that we've looked at before. So it's not like you're starting from completely scratch. You're starting from somebody else is helping you by giving you hints and tips. It's not that you're going to copy and paste their work or turn in their work as yours, but you're going to see a very good sample of someone who's already been through it. And I would recommend that you strongly look at that, is that network. And again, that network doesn't begin on that Good Friday, or it doesn't begin the day that you got your approval. It starts when you start your classes. And you meet students in class, and you know they're people you work projects with and you can count on. So that's really important. In the College of Education, we have on the 3rd floor a graduate lab where it's a common working area, and it's secured, it's locked. We go in, we get a key once you're at this stage, and it's really neat to find the people dropping by when they're working on their material as well. And while I'm working on my work, 2 or 3 stations over is one of my colleagues working on his or hers. And it's really neat to say, can I ask you? Sure. And rarely will somebody say, not now, I'm in the middle of something so important you can't interrupt me. So it's really important to take advantage of that. So I don't know if your colleges have something similar, but I would say you should look into that. Are there areas where you and your colleagues can meet together and have it an established meeting area for materials sharing? The other one is, of course, we have group emails that we send each other stuff. Every time Dr. Mills finds something that's neat that I need to know, she doesn't only send it out to me, she sends it out to my colleagues, and if she doesn't, then I forward it to them too. The realistic timelines that Dr. Mills was talking about is very important. I got my approval on my proposal on September the 5th. It took me 3 days because I had to tweak some things from my defense to clean it up on my IRB. So I submitted it on September the 8th. I got approved on October the 18th. So if you do the math, it's about 6 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks. So she's right. And yeah, I got a little antsy. So if you look at the next slide, practical tips. I'm sorry, I went back.
There you go.
Right there. One of the things is, of course, spell check your protocol and your proposal. Make sure that it's really clean, because while your committee may forgive a couple of misspelled or a couple of grammatical errors in your defense, the IRB will not. They will send it back. So it's not that they're looking for these things to slow you down, but they've got to do it by the book. So you got to keep it really clean. Be clear and inclusive with everything. When you submit your IRB, you're going to have to submit your protocols, which are your interview questions, etc., consent forms that you may need. Submit them. Mine needed to be tweaked, and I didn't find out till like 3 weeks later. And I was like, darn, if I had not done this, I'd be done. They would have approved it today, right? So I learned the hard way that make sure that everything is really, really clean. Expect a call and return email on protocols. That's why I mentioned it there. They're not out to stop you, but it just does slow you down if they find things. The next one's really important. I made it a point to meet the people working at the office where we submit the IRB, at the REIN office, which is just somewhere right over here. It's, yeah, right there. And it's important because you call and you drop by and you email. I'm sorry to bother you, but any word yet on my proposal? I know it's been 3 weeks only, and if you're friendly to them, they'll be friendly to you. And when they found a little error on my protocol that they called my attention to, it was not through an email. They called me to my cell. And they wouldn't have done that had I not been making myself known to them and showing them that this was really important to me. So don't take it like I don't want to bother them. If you do it in a friendly, professional way, it's not bothering them. That's their job too. So get to know the office manager there and provide your cell number. And we'll take questions at the end. So thank you for letting me share this.
You have 2 students, right?
I do.
We'll just vacate and let them come up
Well,
here.
thank you very much. Gina, Joel, you want to come on, sit up front? I direct the program in creative writing, the Master of Fine Arts program within the English department. And I was asked to speak about revision, which is not the sexiest of topics, but kind of interesting when you get to thinking about it. And I'm glad that Joel Garza is here from Communications and Gina Torres from our MFA in Creative Writing, and they can add to what I'm going to say. The reality is that writing is rewriting. We don't like to know that. We don't like to hear that. We don't like to do it. But writing is rewriting. My specialty is playwriting, and there was a Swedish playwright, August Strindberg. He believed in automatic writing. He would sit down, inspired, and simply write a draft of the play. He would not go back. He would not reread it. He would not change a single word. The difference between August Strindberg and me and you is that he was a genius, and at least I'm not. Ernest Hemingway rewrote the final paragraph to Farewell to Arms 26 times. If that's good enough for Ernest Hemingway, it's good enough for us. You have to rewrite. It's interesting, I didn't know that Joel was going to be here, but I serve on his committee. He's within the communications department, and he's writing a thesis comparing 2 very provocative plays. And he asked me to be on his committee and turned in I think it was in excess of a 90-page thesis. I gave it back to him with comments and questions on every page. He will be rewriting. Gina, a little earlier in the process than Joel, gave me 47 pages of script for her play Tuesday evening. And before we sat down here, she and I were talking about the revisions I'd like her to make in that play. So your chair and members of your committee will be asking you to rewrite. Do not be surprised. Do not sulk. Do not think you are above rewriting. None of us are. When I wrote my own PhD dissertation a number of years ago, my chair, he wanted to see it chapter by chapter, and his comment was the same each time as I turned in work: take this out, take this out, take this out. And he was perfectly correct about that. And I took it out because I understood that the best thesis, the best dissertation is the completed thesis and the finished dissertation. I did one smart thing. I saved all the material he told me to cut out. And 3 years after getting my doctorate, when I was willing to go back and look at that material, having been traumatized by living with it for so many years, I found a publisher for the dissertation. But they said, you know, it's not long enough. I said, thank God I've got all this stuff I cut out. Now it goes back in. So we are constantly rewriting. No document is ever finished. No play, no thesis, no dissertation. Just a question of how many more changes, how much more you can do with it. The one danger, of course, is that when you have multiple members of a committee, you will get different suggestions. I have no words of wisdom about that. I really don't. In my final semester, I had a job, and one of my committee members said, you know, you really ought to rewrite this. And I said, you're right, but I have a job offer and I can't. I'll do that when I publish it. And she was amenable. but you will be prepared that you will get conflicting feedback from different members of your committee. Go with the feedback from the chair of your committee. Having said that, Gina, what do you want to say about the process?
Well, first I want to say hello. I know that we had some lovely advice from the previous presenters and from Dr. Zwerling. And all of them are absolutely right. You have to start immediately. As soon as you come into whichever program you're in, it's important to start coming up with an idea. What I do is I carry a small little notebook that you can put in your pocket or in a purse or something that's easily carried wherever you're going, because that's when the best ideas come. You can be in at the grocery store and all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, I can put that in my thesis, and you just write it down. And it's handy, you can take it everywhere. And absolutely, you should be looking at different members in the program who work well with you, that share your same interests. Dr. Zwerling, his specialty is playwriting. I am writing a play. It's important that the person that you choose is someone that you know that you'll work well with, you have similar interests, they're a specialist in whatever you're interested in, and that the type of writing that you're going to do, the format of writing that you're going to go into, they have a similar format of writing. If you're going into a field that's subjective, such as creative writing, you have different genres. You have drama, fiction, you can do a comedy. If your chair likes drama and very serious plays, and you're writing a comedy, you might not jive very well. They might suggest something that you're not familiar with. So it's important that you get to know your chair beforehand, and I know and trust Dr. Zwerling with everything. You should trust them also. I know that Dr. Zwerling said that your chair, when you were going, told you to cut things out, and in his case, he was absolutely right. And I have the same experience. You should trust your chair. They've been through the process before. They're there to mentor you and guide you, and you should follow their advice. The last thing that I wanted to mention would be any textbooks or suggested readings that you have throughout the course of your program. Hold on to them. I know that it's very tempting when you're trying to pay tuition and you have a gas bill coming in to sell them back to the university or sell them to a friend or family member. But towards the end, when you're writing your bibliography for your critical introduction, or if you're in a doctoral program and you're trying to get your dissertation done, having those textbooks and those references will become invaluable. And with that, I shall hand it over.
Thank you. How's everybody tonight? And I know everybody's looking very excited. I do want to mention, and I want to go back really briefly to the committee, because I had quite of a issue with mine at the beginning of this semester. I thought I had everything set, and usually they tell you in grad school you can never be 100% sure that anything is set and ready to go, and it's true, and that happened to me. I had a committee set, and I had sent that information to the graduate school when I began my program 2 years ago. And when I was ready to send out drafts of my thesis, one of my committee members disappeared on me, and I never heard from her. I never got any information from her, which was very scary. And I started to panic because I thought, if I can't find this member, then I'm going to have to put it into fourth gear and figure out where I'm going to find another committee member so late in the game. So I spoke to Dr. Montehue, who was my chair, and she suggested a list of various professors at the university outside of our program, because that was the professor that I needed to fill their chair on my committee, that would be maybe interested in the same path that I was going for my thesis. And my thesis is different, as Dr. Zwerling said, in that I'm comparing two plays. And so it's very difficult to find a committee member who has some experience either seeing the show or with the writers themselves. And so luckily, I was able to find Dr. Zwerling, who did agree to sit on my committee and read over my thesis. And he's been a great committee member. I mean, I've had more difficulty with my other committee members than I've had with Dr. Zwerling, because he read my thesis within a weekend, and I had edits right back the following Tuesday. So I was ready to go with his questions. And yes, I have a 90-page thesis, and yes, there are questions posed on every single one of those pages. So I've got a lot of work to do between now and my defense date, which will be in March. But what I want to point out now is that you can never be too prepared. Set aside some time to review those committee members that you want to go through and know the people that you want to talk to beforehand, and make sure that they're going to commit more than anything else, because it's a very scary point when you come so close to the finish line, and to have somebody else hold your graduation in jeopardy is really a frightening concept. And so to know that, at least I was lucky in that I found a committee member who was dedicated to what I was doing, but not everybody is so lucky, and it may take you a semester to find somebody else who's going to commit, and you don't want to wait an extra semester and pay the tuition for a dead semester. So I say, again, try to choose as many committee members as possible, or know the people that you can work with, and choose the best ones and have them commit firsthand more than anything else. I've had a great experience, though, other than that, through my department. I was unconventional because I chose a chair who was not in our department daily. She's a retired professor, but she's still part of our program, and so I was able to choose her as my chair, which was great because Dr. Montehue has a lot of free time now. Being a retired professor, she spends a lot more time able to review my research and review my thesis and send back edits quickly. So it was great, and a lot of times you have difficulty finding a professor who is teaching, who is doing research of their own, and still managing a family and other things, and so it's difficult in that respect. But luckily, I had a great chair who was very dedicated to what I was studying, and I did know what I wanted to study from the very beginning. I know what I want to study for my dissertation, and so my thesis was just a small aspect of what I want to pursue when I get to PhD. But like I said, I've enjoyed my stay at this program. All the professors here have been very helpful, so has the graduate school. So I've been very lucky in that aspect. But yes, I do want to stress the fact that you can never be too prepared, especially with something as jeopardizing as a thesis. And so when going through, make sure that you have the best possible information that you can.
And should we make way for some of your students?
Well, one of my students is here. Danielle is here too. Danielle here too. You can stay. Well, I was asked to address another aspect of the proposal, and that is the actual presentation of the proposal. So now we're going to pick up at a point where you have been thoroughly terrorized for a number of months, and you are now at the stage where you actually are going to do that proposal defense. And there are a couple of questions that I was asked to quickly touch on. And the first one was, is the proposal defense open to the public? The short answer is yes. Anyone can come to your proposal defense. There is an order, pecking order of how questions can be asked, but basically anyone could ask questions that are there at your defense. So you have to be prepared to answer questions from almost any area related to what you're doing. Generally speaking, or at least the many dissertations that I've been associated with, you tend to find, or certainly in my case as a chair of the dissertation committee, is that I would have clarified just about everything conceivable, and I've terrorized my students, over that time leading up. So by the time I get to the defense, there really is not much questions that I will personally ask. But anyone on your committee, any professor, or any other guest in the audience could ask you questions. So you have to come really, really prepared to defend what you're proposing. The simple way I like to explain it to students is that you are now in a mode where you're trying to sell an idea. You have to convince your audience. Of course, the primary audience is your committee, but you have to convince them that what you're going to be doing, this dissertation or this thesis that you're doing, is worth doing. And it's not worth doing simply because this is something I want to do. You have to back it up with facts, data, you must know your methodology, everything related to it, and show how you are going to contribute to knowledge by doing this thesis or this dissertation. And that's what it's all about. It's that process of selling that idea, making sure that your audience is thoroughly convinced that what you're doing is appropriate. So if you think about it that way, you realize how broad it is and how difficult it is to do that, especially if there's a member of your committee or a member in the audience who thinks that it's not worthwhile, and you have to convince them. I always go back to my own experience when I talk with my students. There was a member of my committee who got signed off on the document, and on the date question, on the defense date, he asked questions non-stop for more than half an hour, in addition to other to the questions from the rest of the panel. And I was thrown off to some extent, but fortunately I knew exactly what I was doing, and I was able to answer those questions. You have to come prepared in that regard. Some other things related to the actual proposal defense is one advice I always pass on to students is it's pretty common to use PowerPoint or some other presentation like that. And that's good. It's a nice way to organize. But there are a couple of things that you must know, that PowerPoint is one of the most abused presentation mechanisms. One of the biggest mistakes students often make is that they literally have too much on their slides. It's just a bunch of words, a lot of numbers, and you spend all the time reading the slides, or worse yet, your audience spends all the time reading the slides and they don't hear a word of what you're saying. And then what that does for you is that it creates two problems. One, because they didn't hear what you said, they ask you the same things that you had said before when a question and answer, and it sometimes throws you off. As well as when you have a lot of stuff on the slide, there's even more reasons for them to ask questions for stuff that's on the slides too. So I always recommend to keep it brief, bullet points, few bullet points. You are the expert here. You are selling this proposal. So keep it brief, you know what you want to say, and you can elaborate on those brief bullet points. But do not write essays on each of those slides. Another thing that can't be overstated when it comes to your slides, your presentation, is take the time to make sure they're done accurately. I cannot overestimate that. It's amazing how many times I've been to presentations and see glaring, absolutely glaring grammatical errors. It throws people off because they focus, and it's probably happened to you too. You see a slide up there and the words are spelled incorrectly. What happens is that you focus on that. It's just human nature. So you tend to do it. Again, you're not listening to the person. It opens up more opportunities for them to ask you questions, the very thing that you had explained earlier, because they were focusing on those grammatical errors. As well as a very important fundamental point when it comes to that is, as a person who is on the committee, if I see you do a presentation and have slides with grammatical errors, it raises a huge red flag in my mind that if you can't be careful enough, if you can't be trusted to do correct grammar, correct slides, how much confidence can I have that you are careful enough to run your methodology properly, to do your analysis properly? It really does. Some people think that there's a disconnect, but they're really very related. So it shows how thorough you are, it shows how careful you are, because it flows through actually what you're doing with everything. Also, just some other quick things on the proposal itself too. Someone asked the question, should I provide food? My answer to that is no. You're not there to bribe anyone. Offering me a couple of cookies won't make me think your presentation is good enough. So there's no need for that. And it could be misconstrued in terms of what. And then who books the room for your presentation, for your proposal defense? Usually it depends in different circumstances. I can speak for our college. If it's an MBA thesis, it's usually handled by the MBA department. If it's a PhD thesis is offered, it's handled by the PhD program. But ultimately, it's your responsibility. So you have to follow up. Don't take it for granted that the room is booked, there's PowerPoint equipment, there's a computer there, or any other things like that. You must follow up with whichever department is responsible for it or is supposed to do it. And if you do that, then again, it shows how thorough you are. You do not want to turn up and make apologies on the day. And this way, it also will make things run smoothly. You're less likely to get thrown off your game because you're nervous, the computer isn't working, and so on, if you ensure that everything is set up prior to your proposal. So unless the committee, well, Danielle might want to say a few words about his experience. Danielle is actually at the stage now where he's 1 day away from his proposal. So he's going to do his dissertation proposal defense tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So it's actually less than a day now, 3 hours short. So he's nervous, he's sweating now.
I wish I'd known all of that before. Now I'm scared. No, well, I think all the advice that we've been hearing tonight is very helpful. Choosing your committee members is crucial, right at the beginning. You have to know what you're getting yourself into. You have to choose your chair correctly. There's a lot of people that are scared of this guy right here in the College of Business because he's really thorough. He really pushes you. He's on top of you. That's exactly why I chose him. I wouldn't have chosen anybody else because I know that Dr. Jackson will make me work. You're writing, right? So keep that in mind whenever you're choosing your committee. Make sure that you choose somebody that will help you through the process, will give you the most helpful tips, and will actually read your work and will follow through. Because I think when you defend your proposal and you defend your dissertation, it doesn't end there. You still have to publish whatever you did, because if not, why go through all the trouble, right? So you have to have somebody that even after you graduate, you can have a friendship, a relationship with this person, and make sure that you're able to move forward and publish your work. With respect to the presentation, yeah, my proposal dissertation defense is tomorrow. Of course, it's nerve-wracking. It's scary. I mean, you know that you know your material, but still you're going to sit in front of all your committee members at once, and they're probably going to come up with questions that they didn't come up with before. What I've done is that I began my presentation putting together all the information about 3 weeks ago. I've practiced like 4 or 5 times. I've gotten together with Dr. Jackson to make sure that everything that I'm putting in there makes sense, that the sequence of the slides makes sense. And all you can do is practice, practice, practice. I mean, I think that's the best advice for the presentation. I'll let you guys know how it goes tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're open for questions. Any questions?
That's great. Hello? There you go. I love it. Can you hear me? Yes. Dr. Jackson, you just mentioned that the PowerPoint is probably one of the most viewed forms of media, I guess, for the presentation itself. Did you mean that because people have, or students have a tendency to put too much information onto each slide, or is there something better that we can use when it comes to?
No, the PowerPoint as a tool is excellent, and I will use PowerPoint in some presentations that I do. I'm a very ad-lib person. I usually don't use notes and so on. Even when I'm teaching, I never use PowerPoints in the classroom. But as a tool, it's an excellent tool to use. It's just abused. People think that they can just put everything on the slides and stand there reading the slides. I often say if that's what you're going to do, just hand out something. And let them read it, because that's what they're doing. They're not going to be listening to you, which is not the aim. You want them to listen to you. You want to be extemporaneous in your discussion. And yes, I know it's terrifying for some people. I've been doing this for many years, so I'm, more comfortable doing that. But the strange thing is that the less information you have there, it's the less likely you are to make mistakes. Because the truth is, nobody knows exactly what you're going to say. So even when you make something I learned a long time ago in public speaking, nobody knows what you're going to say. So even if you make a mistake, unless it's an egregious mistake, I mean, it's something really terrible, just keep going. Nobody knows. And that's the whole idea. Whereas with PowerPoint, you have too much stuff that you're reading, you make mistakes, you're nervous, and so on. It detracts from your presentation.
I want to go off of what you said, because I teach public speaking, and yes, I tell my students to use PowerPoint as an outline. You should never put all your information up there, but refer to it and know what those keywords are, so that way when you're speaking, you can look back and say, that's where I'm going next, and then follow yourself for that. Or put statistical information or pie graphs, something like that, that you can then use as reference, or photographs, things like that, but never all your information, because then you're just reading. And I always tell my students, we're not in kindergarten anymore. Nobody wants to be read to. I want you to talk to me. So I feel that, yes, if you reference that way, it's a lot better.
There's a very humorous YouTube that is right on the money, and it's called Death by PowerPoint. It is hysterical. I show it every year because I teach the first master's course in our department, and Death by PowerPoint will tell you exactly what everyone's been telling you. It's humorous, but it's right on target.
So on average, the PowerPoint is basically the professional way to go, but can you beef it up with extraneous demonstration? Is there something that professors really do prefer other than the simple, plain Jane professional PowerPoint?
Plain Jane.
Well, it depends on the circumstance and exactly what you're doing. Sometimes, other things depend on the subject matter. Something that's an illustration and so forth can be used. It all depends on the circumstances. It's just that this, what I call the over-reliance on PowerPoint. People think that automatically, because you have a PowerPoint presentation, you're good. That's not true. In fact, it detracts often from what you're saying, what you're presenting, and it basically just makes a lousy job.
And just to make another comment, when you're working on something that's as crucial as a dissertation or a thesis, simple is usually better than something more complex. I know that it was mentioned earlier, if you put more things on a PowerPoint, you're opening up yourself to more questions and more opportunities for error. So it's better to go on simple, direct, and something that the audience can follow easily.
And just a final thought on that with a PowerPoint too, something else that people like to do, which it's just more distracting than anything else, is just put so much animation on their PowerPoint, and everything is twirling around, and usually that's just distracting from what you're doing. Keep it simple.
How about regarding the length of the presentation itself? Is there, I'm sure it varies, but is there a good average time?
Well,
in our department, the proposal is anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, and the dissertation defense is an hour. You have a lot to say at the end.
Yeah, which is about consistent with COBA, the College of Business.
I think that's common.
It's pretty common in that area, somewhere between half an hour, 45 minutes for the thesis, and a little longer for the dissertation.
So it'd be the same for thesis and dissertation.
Yes, it tends to be a little longer for the dissertation because you it's a bigger work, so sometimes it takes longer. And just I know we're focusing on a proposal, but there's a slight difference between a proposal and a final defense. The proposal tends to be more exploratory, so you spend a lot more time talking about what you're going to do in terms of how the literature affects it and how you're advancing stuff, whereas with the final dissertation defense, you focus more on what you have accomplished. This is what I did, this is how I have made my mark, and this is why this should be published. So just a slight twist in the focus between the two in terms of the presentation.
One more question. So when it's time to deliver the final defense, is it best to rehash the entire 1, 2, or 3 years worth of work? Or do you focus just on what led up to the conclusion of the project?
Well, I usually encourage my students to focus more on the second half. We got the first half, we thought it was good, and that's why they said you could go ahead. So yes, you're going to connect the dots, so you are going to show how the work was influenced, where it came from, what a literature review, how you focused on this, and this is more, as I said, more like the business. But then you focus more on what you have accomplished and your contribution in the final defense.
The very same for our college. You have to repeat the problem, you have to do your purpose, have to do your questions, but you just go slide, 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 slide. The vast majority of your time is spent on results, recommendations, discussion.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? Everybody's good? Well, I'd like to thank our guests, Dr. Jackson, Dr. Zwerling, and Dr. Mills. We appreciate everybody coming out for these graduate workshops. This is our first one of the spring, and in your packets you'll find a calendar for both our teaching academy as well as our graduate workshops, and we invite everybody to come out to those whenever you can. There's a lot of useful information that you can obtain through them. And if we have no more questions, thank you.
Thank you too.
Very interesting.